History is often a tapestry woven with threads of certainty, yet within its vast expanse lie intriguing gaps, whispers of figures whose stories remain tantalizingly incomplete. One such enigmatic echo from the 18th century concerns a figure known only as the Princess of Javasu, a name that evokes both regal authority and profound mystery. We delve not into sensationalism, but into the architecture of this idea, exploring the fragments that compose her legend and the landscapes they reveal. The 18th century itself was a crucible of transformation, a world of burgeoning empires, scientific enlightenment, and intensifying global interconnectedness. Specifically, our gaze turns to Southeast Asia, a region then undergoing profound changes under the complex pressures of colonial expansion and local power struggles. The term Javasu itself holds no obvious direct historical reference, suggesting either a localized variant, a coded name, or perhaps a place lost to shifting geographical understanding. This immediately highlights the challenge inherent in studying such figures, the fragmented nature of 18th century documentation, particularly concerning non-European narratives. Much of what survives is filtered through colonial perspectives, often overlooking or misinterpreting indigenous histories and the roles of powerful local women. The title, Princess, suggests a high social standing, likely within a royal lineage or a prominent chieftaincy, indicating significant political or spiritual influence. Unlike some Western societies, women in many Southeast Asian cultures held considerable power, serving as regents, warriors, and powerful merchants, challenging typical European gender norms. Empires like the Dutch East India Company, VOC, were expanding, clashing with and co-opting local sultanates, creating a volatile and opportunistic environment. In this power vacuum, charismatic figures, especially those with ancestral claims, could emerge as symbols of resistance or figures negotiating alliances. The earliest mentions of the Princess of Javasu often appear in the margins of colonial administrative reports or obscure travelogues, almost as an aside. She is typically described not as a protagonist, but as an obstacle or an unknown force influencing local dynamics, reflecting a European inability to fully grasp indigenous sovereignty. While Javasu eludes precise mapping, historical clues might point towards regions within the modern Indonesian archipelago, perhaps parts of Sumatra, Borneo, or even the Lesser Sunda Islands. Was her power military, political, or spiritual? Given the era, a confluence of all three was common for rulers in these complex pre-colonial and early colonial societies. Searching for indigenous accounts involves sifting through oral traditions, local chronicles, and folk tales, which often encode historical events within mythical narratives. Deciphering these sources requires careful contextualization, understanding metaphors and allusions that might reveal the princess, not as a direct historical portrait, but a cultural archetype. Perhaps she led resistance against encroaching colonial forces, or shrewdly navigated alliances to protect her people's autonomy amidst external pressures. Even if her actions are obscure, the mere mention of her name across various fragmented sources suggests a figure of considerable, perhaps mythical, importance. Could the Princess of Javasu have been a real historical individual, a powerful woman whose deeds simply escaped the Eurocentric historical record? Or was she a composite, an amalgamation of several influential women whose combined legends coalesced into a single, compelling narrative for cultural or political reasons? Perhaps she was never a physical ruler, but a powerful spiritual leader, a priestess or oracle, whose influence guided her community through turbulent times. We must be cautious of imposing modern interpretations onto 18th century cultural contexts, where the lines between temporal power and spiritual authority were often blurred. The absence of detailed records creates a vacuum, which folklore and collective memory naturally fill, often imbuing figures with legendary qualities. Even if fictionalized, the persistent usage of Princess of Javasu implies a profound cultural resonance, a story deemed important enough to transmit through generations. In the face of colonial narratives that often erased indigenous agency, such figures might have served as a form of cultural resistance, maintaining identity and hope. The task of the historian, then, becomes less about definitively proving her existence and more about understanding the meaning she held for those who remembered her. Despite sparse external documentation, the resonance of such a figure would likely persist in local oral traditions, community celebrations, or even place names. She might have become a guiding light for future generations, inspiring movements of cultural preservation or resistance against foreign domination. Colonial powers often sought to dismantle local leadership structures, especially those that fostered unity or presented ideological challenges, explaining potential erasure. Yet, the very survival of her name, however faint, suggests that certain narratives are resilient, capable of transcending deliberate attempts at historical revision. Her story, whether fact or folklore, serves as a powerful reminder of the rich and often untold histories of women in pre-colonial and colonial Southeast Asia. Contemporary indigenous scholars are increasingly revisiting these elusive figures, seeking to reconstruct narratives from within their own cultural frameworks, unburdened by colonial biases. The Princess of Javasu is not unique. Similar figures exist across colonized regions, embodying resilience and localized power structures often minimized by dominant histories. Her story thus moves beyond a mere search for facts, becoming an inquiry into how cultures construct and preserve meaning in the face of historical silence. The creation of a compelling figure like the Princess of Javasu highlights how societies build conceptual architectures around scarce historical data. Collective memory isn't a passive archive. It's an active process of selection, interpretation, and re-narration, constantly shaping and reshaping our understanding of the past. A princess in a potentially threatened land becomes a potent symbol of continuity, sovereignty, and the enduring spirit of a people facing immense change. The historical truth of the Princess of Javasu might reside not in verifiable documents, but in the truth of what her existence meant to those who believed in her. It's an ethical imperative for historians to acknowledge these gaps and treat indigenous narratives with the same intellectual rigor as colonial archives. By doing so, we gain a more nuanced, multifaceted understanding of history, recognizing the diverse ways in which human experience is recorded and remembered. The question of whether the Princess of Javasu was a literal ruler or a powerful idea remains, perhaps permanently, an open one. And it is in this very ambiguity that her richness lies, challenging our conventional notions of historical evidence and the boundaries of verifiable truth. We have journeyed through the sparse mentions, the geopolitical currents of the 18th century, and the intricate layers of historical interpretation. The Princess of Javasu reminds us that history is not solely composed of what is known, but equally by what is remembered, even if vaguely. Her story endures as a testament to human resilience, the persistence of local narratives, and our collective fascination with the echoes of extraordinary lives. The Princess of Javasu beckons us to look beyond the surface, to listen for the faint whispers of history that challenge dominant narratives and enrich our understanding of the human story.